Okay, and then we're gonna start. Maybe some other people will come in later, but I will, get them in quietly. And welcome everybody with this third regenerative learning session. This time we're gonna talk about regenerative building or eco building or co-building or living tree building. Well, Peter's gonna explain us more about it later on. And I'm super excited to have Peter here. It's a good friend of mine, but he's also, really impressive builder. He just makes really beautiful things. You already see something in the background where he's sitting there at one of his buildings. And I think it's, there it is. I think it's just really nice, to have sessions like this and learn from other people's journeys, because Peter made a really, nice journey through the years, going towards really being a builder as a profession, and doing something he really loves. And I think it can be super inspiring for us all who want to make regeneration really happening and make it maybe even our job. So today we're going to listen to Peter. It's going to be around 3/4 of an hour, no, Pete? And something like that. And then we have like 15 minutes more for the discussion. But Peter just told me that you can also ask your questions during the session. So if you have a question, you can put them in the chat and I will intervene within the talk, and then we can discuss it during the talk as well. So Pete, are you ready?
Ready and happy to play?
Ready and happy to play, yes. Rolling, good.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura, for the introduction and for the invitation, and thank you all for being here. I see some familiar faces of people who have learned me about living building and people who are living building with me right now. So that's nice that you're present. So as Laura said, please feel free to interrupt if you have questions during my presentation. I would much rather go straight into your questions and then at the end, and we'll see what that means in the end if we can go all the way to the end of the presentation. But I think we'll be fine some way or the other. Okay, well, let's start. Let's see, I'll share something with you to do. If you don't see my screen right now, please let me know. But I don't hear anything. Okay, thank you. Laura basically asked me two things. One, to tell a bit about regenerative building, but also about the road that led me there. So we'll start off with a bit more personal human interest, I hope, a story about how I got where I am now, but then we'll also have a more, maybe more theoretical or knowledge part about tree shaping and arbosculpture for growing living houses, which for me is really the summum of regenerative building, and not so much what I call natural building, which is more like with loam and with straw, with round wood, which I think is becoming a bit more mainstream, luckily. But that's for me is natural building, and I really like to talk with you guys today about living building, with this really a next level for me, and maybe I hope also a bit less known for you guys, so you will also learn something. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So how did I get here? This is more the natural building part that I was saying. This is our house that we built in Peru. I think it was a six-year project on the coast of Peru. We built a house of recycled mud bricks, with a lot of recycled materials, straw, wood, and it turned into quite a nice creation, which I'll tell a bit more about later, maybe. Here on the next slide, you can see me plastering another house that we built here in Amsterdam, which is also in my background. In Amsterdam, it's also a house that we finished building. That was the second house that we built. And in the other slide, I'm standing in the first prototype of the living house that we built in Osdorp, that I'll tell a bit more about. So, but when Laura asked me to tell a bit about the road to how I got here with about living building, it made me think. So where am I now? And I thought that was a very nice question to ask yourself every now and then. And it kind of made me realize, and maybe it's also a bit of a warning for you guys, that the next 45 minutes you're going to listen to a person who at this moment basically has no job and no sort of income, no idea what he will do in the next phase of his life. So I'm a bit in transition, to be honest, which I have a lot of faith in, to be honest, also. But I don't really know where I am now. But I'll tell you a bit about the road towards how I got here. Because basically being in transition is not really something new for me. When I was young, as you can see in these pictures here, my parents moved around a lot. I was born in Suriname. We lived in Brazil, different places in the Netherlands, and here on the photo on the right, standing in front of one of my first creations I built with my dad. It's actually the wooden box, the crate where all our furniture was moved back in when we moved from Brazil to the Netherlands. And that was one of the first times we built with locally available materials before I even know what material-based design was, or that it was a term to design not based on your concept of what you want to create, but on what you have available. In this case, a wooden moving crate. We built with that, with my little brother as well. And basically during that, I think what that moving around affected in me is that I also was forced to basically rely on myself, because every time I moved, I of course had to say goodbye to friends, which after a short while. So I had to rely on myself, and also every time I came to a new place, I had to quickly adapt, and with what was locally available, build myself a new nest in the physical and emotional sense. And also become good friends with myself, because that was basically the most reliable friend I had, who would not be far away again after 3 years. And basically the first time that changed was when I met my girlfriend Janneke, who is on these slides. She was like basically the first person I accepted to really become attached to. And we met actually in university in Wageningen. Where we, in different studies, we learned a lot about the problems in the world, but also how to not solve them. At least that's the conclusion that we got to, because it was a lot about development aid and changing things in developing countries. And with development aid industry, and we really became convinced that is not something that was for us. We want to have more control over our impacts, and we wanted to act more as a local actor instead of as a foreign aid agency. And basically our strategy for that was to start a vegetarian restaurant in the coastal fishing village in Peru. That's the orange house here. Because that was basically a dream we had for a long time. And we basically calculated our risks and said, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen if we just try this? We set a little bit of money aside, that if it would all fail, we could come back to the Netherlands and maybe have 2-3 months money left to before we had to find a job. So we thought, let's just go and do that and try and offer a complimentary service locally, so we don't start competing with local people, but hopefully they see us as a complementary actor, and we can start to work together. And basically, the first example of that was a fair trade photography company, which we set up because next door to the restaurant I just showed in the past sheet, there was a home for street children who used to live on the street, and now luckily we're living in that home. And every day we passed by their house, and we started greeting each other, and we started becoming friends. And Janneke at a certain moment had the idea to start teaching them photography, and we started selling their pictures on greeting cards. And with that money, they would be able to finance their education. And why I'm telling this is because it's basically one of the first example. Well, yeah, another example of turning local resources into added value. So that can be a crate that you had for moving from Brazil to the Netherlands and take all your stuff, but also local beauty. Like, for example, this man with his sombrero holding a pig. There's also a sense of local beauty, and if you're able to capture it in this sense with a camera, and you're able to sell it, then you can generate value. And that value in this case had I think a very worthwhile goal, because children who otherwise would not have the possibility could study. And that went kind of big. We started in Peru, and then we moved to India and to Morocco. We had offices there too. And basically it was the phase of my life when I started picking the fruits of capitalism. Because of course we were fully operating in big trade fairs, and our partners were big international publishing companies. So it was really, if you don't sell, you're out. There was nothing idealistic about it. They only wanted to work with you if you could make money. We got a shareholder on board. We sold our restaurant in that time. We sold our volunteer agency, our travel agency. And we really had a phase that we wanted to see what we were worth in the real world. Very intense, business phase, you could say. And while we now go a bit more to the natural building, because we had offices at that time in 4 countries, and one was in Peru, and every month we were paying rent for the office, and that was a bit like money going down the drain. So we thought, okay, let's buy a piece of land, which you can see here on the top. It says Vendo with the phone number. That was a piece of land that we bought, and we thought, okay, maybe we can build our own office there, and then we can at least stop paying rent. So basically in 2014 was when we started with the first natural building. And we really did not have much of an idea what we would do and how we would do it. We had no experience with building houses, and it was just something that little by little we started developing a passion for and becoming passionate about it. And we thought, okay, let's just do it and see how it works. We didn't do any calculations on the structures. We just thought, okay, this looks pretty good. Let's not sleep under the roof for the first months to see if it doesn't collapse. And if everything stays up, then we know it was good enough. And so far that's been going quite well. So we built that house in Peru, we built a house in Amsterdam, basically all using just only clay, straw, bamboo, garbage materials. And without having planned it, it started my career as a natural builder. And so that was all very nice, and you could say in a sense, successful or interesting. But after a certain while, and basically it was just before the Corona started, was it 2 years ago already, that we felt kind of tired of flying. We were building our natural house in a pretty poor part of town, like people who didn't have a lot of money. But basically we had the biggest footprint of all our neighbors, because we were the only ones flying into Peru every year to build our natural house, while they were maybe building their house with cement, but at least they were in Peru the whole year. So we thought, okay, we got to stop this flying, and if we want to build a house like this because we like it, let's do that in Europe somewhere. So we moved back to the Netherlands and started a new company called Peter Plank. And basically my dream or vision was to see if I could live off of trash. It was basically what a lot of the kids I was working with in the photography industry, in the photography company, they were kids living on the garbage belt. And I thought it would be interesting to see how that would look if you try to live off of garbage within the Netherlands. So I opened a workshop on an urban farm in Amsterdam, which you can see on these pictures. And apart from all the building with clay, I also did a lot of activities with local kids, often with migrating background. Well, not, they were just like born in Holland, of course, but often their parents came from other countries outside of the Netherlands. And it was also a phase when I got my biggest submersion in community life, because it was a urban farm with about 50, 60 volunteers who were all kind of working together to keep this place beautiful. So that was also an interesting thing to do for me. But while I was doing the natural building there, I also came to the realization that all this natural building is nice and beautiful, but it's also really hard work, because you do everything by hand. You have to carry all these materials, you have to dig it all out, no machines, you have to transport it. And by that time I was maybe 43, so my back was already a bit less flexible than in my younger years. So I thought, how about if I could keep building nice houses, but let nature do the work for me? So maybe I can plant houses instead of building them. And so that was just, kind of like a crazy idea. Which I had also, again, no knowledge about. But I had a place in Osdorp where I could experiment. So here on this slide, you can see the first natural house, the first living house that we planted and built there. But also, I was definitely lacking a lot of knowledge. So we also organized the Levend Huis talk. So it was like basically, Ron, one of the participants of this Zoom, sitting next to his girlfriend, I think, was one of the participants who, with whom we basically shared the knowledge, and we did research together, and we invited people to come and talk about, how do you plant or build a living house. And online you can find quite a lot of information about, which I'm about to show you guys. But I also thought, I can replicate their experiments, but then we'll probably get the same results, or we can try something that other people haven't tried yet, so we can learn something new. So basically in this example, the idea was that in 40 years, this will be a tree where you can live in, this little structure. You can see some very small trees around it. But because, us humans are quite impatient and we want to show what we're doing as a pilot project, we cannot wait 40 years. So let's just build a more conventional natural house out of clay, again, straw, round wood, willow branches. And then we'll plant some trees around it, different trees, different species, so we can learn about what works and what doesn't work. And during the next, 20, 30, 40 years, we'll guide these trees into different shapes and we'll connect them. We'll let them carry the roof structure is the vision. So that, it could, if all goes well, it could grow into a hollow tree where you can enter with a door opening, with window opening. So that theoretically, when it's finished growing, you could take away all the clay and the dead wood that we used to build this, and it would still be a house. But it's totally an experiment. So we really have no idea what it will really look like. But that was basically my first experiment with that. And I think it's nice apart from the trip how I got here to share a bit about what we discovered about living building. And I think one of the here are two quotes about that which I find quite inspirational. But I think the first one is one I would like to share with you. That that's really what sometimes strikes me most, or maybe even hurts me most, about how we humans are building right now, is that as soon before we start building, we usually have a construction site, and one of the first things we do as humans is go over it with a bulldozer and erase all the characteristics of that site. We make everything flat. We take away the trees. We take away maybe the higher little hills or the lower moist parts where there are animals living. We take away the vegetation and we make a blank sheet of sand. And then on top, we start creating something that we or the architects have in mind, like, oh, this would be a nice building, but with hardly any connection with the surrounding. And not taking into account, for example, maybe how the sun goes, that maybe that depression in the land could be a very nice place, not only for nature, but maybe also to clean your sewage water. That maybe there are other characteristics of that site which are just totally not taken into account, and it's basically just erased. And I think that's just very rude of us humans. And then also so taking that more into account for me is very crucial with the living building, but also that it's not so static as buying a turnkey house which is ready and you just get the key and you start living in it. But with living building, it's really something that evolves. And again, that evolution, that growth, is a reaction to the nuances of that place. How hot is it? How cold is it? How moist is it? How does the soil turn around? And also it's also expression of the relation between your house, a living house, and you as a user. If you don't take care of your site, you're going to kill your house. And if you take very nice care of your site, you're going to live in a thriving house, which maybe produces you 100 kilos of apples every year. Totally different. And I thought, wow, that's very cool and inspiring. And maybe just one little thing to show on the bottom photo. I don't know if you can see those two little kind of like guitar shapes with the cat in it. That's basically, it's a kind of like a windowsill. So it's one tree that's branched, and then on top of the window it goes together again. So it's just one of the examples how you can also like make a windowsill out of a living tree. So just in case you didn't see that yet. So I want to tell you guys a bit about what it is, something about the history, something about techniques, possibilities, what a living house can be, advantages. Well, we'll see how we go with time. Maybe so here on this picture you can see two examples of how you can build with nature. The top one is more natural, and the bottom one is nature with combined with humans are also nature. Humans and nature combined. So the top one is basically totally natural. You can see that quite often in forests, especially in old growth forests, if you look very well, that sometimes branches of one tree are connecting with the other tree, and over time they will just totally melt, connect, start sharing liquids flowing up and down the stem. So for example, so they just totally unite. It's called inoculation. So for example, on the top picture here, the right tree, if you would cut it below the connection, it would stay alive and start taking its saps, its water, its nutrients from the roots of the left tree. So they're totally united. It became a living age. And the bottom picture is more what happens when humans start try different ways of natural building or living building, and they put a metal rod in a position where they think is useful for that building, and then also the tree encapsulates it and has a remarkable capacity of dealing with these disturbances. It still doesn't sound very nice to hammer a nail in a tree. It's not something I would encourage, but it is something that by now I realize is something that a lot of trees can handle. So I wouldn't panic too much about that. Only from an ethical point of view, maybe, that it's not nice if a tree would hammer a nail into me, even if I would survive. Ask Jesus Christ. What is it? And is it regenerative? Because that's, of course, why I was invited for this talk. We're talking about regenerative techniques. So for me, living building is the shaping and joining of branches and or roots of living trees to shape multifunctional objects. So not only houses, but a lot more options I'll get into. And then these trees, they form different structures according to how you shape them. So on the right, you see a little bench made of apple trees. And on the left, you see some trees which kind of made a basket, you could say, where you could stand in. So they form the structure, and the roots form the foundation of what you are building. I thought, that's also very interesting, that maybe we could finally get rid of these cement foundations or heipalen. I don't know what the English word for heipalen is, but like these pieces, these big cement poles we put in the ground to build our houses on, at least in the Netherlands with all the peat. Yeah, also not very nice. So maybe roots could play a role in that. So that's what it is. Yeah, my definition. And then you basically have two main ways of living building. One is arbor sculpture, and one is tree shaping. So in the sculpturing, you're joining the different trees, but from the similar families. So they start sharing their sap streams, and that's what you see on that picture. It's basically, I think, about 6 or 7 trees that were planted, and basically their branches were united. And during the growth, they really became one. And now they made like this basket kind of shape. And the tree shaping is more that you let a stem grow. And then during its growing, you kind of guide it and you prune it so that it gets into a shape. And one of what inspires me the most about this is that if you build like this, whatever it is that you build, that every year your building becomes bigger, stronger, and more beautiful, which is basically the opposite of your normal house, because normally a normal house starts decaying in the while time passes, so it might become smaller because something falls. It definitely becomes more vulnerable often, more brittle, and usually less beautiful. You have to paint it again, or you have to replace things. While this this living building, if you take good care of it and give it a lot of love, it can become bigger, stronger, and more beautiful. So again, we're still talking very conceptual. I can imagine you have a lot of practical questions like, okay, but how does that work in practice? But conceptually, I think it's a very very stimulating thought. And then the question is, how do we do it? But that's why we're experimenting. One of the and of course it's always good to look at the past. This is really such a good idea, and humans are already on the earth for a long time. Did people already maybe do it in the past? Are there people living somewhere in living houses? And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of those examples of people living in living houses. So maybe it was not a good idea, or maybe they all decayed and vanished. I don't know. But what we do see as quite old examples are these living root bridges in northeastern India. And you can find a lot of information about it online and nice videos, but it's supposedly one of the wettest places on earth. And you have streams which become raging rivers during the rainy season. And a lot of our conventional bridges that we make nowadays out of cement and steel, they cannot stand these extreme conditions. Plus, it's a very remote area where it's very hard to fly those materials in. So basically, the people there over the years, for many years, have grown their own bridges. And basically, what you see here on these pictures are the roots of fig trees, giant fig trees. And so, for example, the main picture on the right, you can see the fig tree, and the root has been guided through a hollow bamboo to the other side of the river, and invited to take root there. So basically the root crossed the river, and the people during the building, it says 10 to 15 years is the information I could find online. During that, while it's being guided, it's allowed to grow, and it's allowed to shape, so that after an X amount of years, it is strong enough to cross. And the most remarkable examples I found online are bridges of 35 meters in length, which carry up to 50 people. They can become very old and actually regenerating, if maybe the side railing where you hold on to breaks off for some reason. You can just imagine it would grow back again with a bit of love and attention. So they can become very, very old. And one of the videos, which I thought was very touching, that I saw online, was also of a father explaining his daughter about the building process, because he would realize that he would probably not be there anymore when the bridge was completed, and he wanted, of course, his daughter to play a part in that. And that, of course, I think is also very, mind-boggling paradigm shift about how we look towards maybe sustainability and thinking about future generations when we do things. And now it's of course a lot more short term, and we want quick results. And another nice detail you can also see on the small picture here is how they managed to put stones in the bottom of the tree. So it's like stepping stones, and they basically were laid on the branches. And just as with the metal pole I showed earlier, the roots basically encapsulate the rock, so they hold them. Yeah, they keep them in place. So yeah, very nice way to interact, to add a different material and make very cool bridges. And I think I haven't visited, but I heard that I think it's already finished the Floriade, but they were also trying to build a living bridge in the Floriade in Almere. So if you still have a chance, go and check it out. This is also a very famous example from the beginning of last century. John Groesbeck, you always read about him, and he basically grew his own chair. So he planted 32 elder trees as thorns on strategic places, and during this 11-year period, he guided the branches to the shape that he wanted. And you can also see where some branches connect with each other. They again, this occultation happens, so they start really connecting and making very strong connections where no screw or other material is needed. And yeah, I imagine that at a certain moment he thought, okay, this tree is good now. He sat in it and it felt nice. And then he killed it. he cut it off just above the soil level, and he was able to take away that tree. Yeah, so very nice experiment. You need a bit of patience. And what I also learned about his experience, that he was also practicing to regulate growth speed, because you can imagine that with a tree like this or a chair like this, some branches need to grow a bit faster because you need maybe like 1 or 2 meters length, and other branches can be shorter. So he was trying to regulate that growth speed by ringing. I forgot the English word now, but basically on the outside, he would, of the branch, he would put something tight to try and influence the saps running through it, and that way try and slow the growth, which I think is also quite risky, because if you do too much, you stop the growth and you kill it. But yeah, apparently he was successful. I didn't read about his failures. And at the little picture at the bottom, you can also see what this inoculation looks like if you cut the branch. So you basically see 2 stems who are connected, and they really start sharing their cambium. So the part of the wood that's below the outer shell. So it's really like it becomes one branch where the liquids from both sides flow through and can be interexchanged.
Wait one second, because Alex, you asked, is it bootstrapping? What do you mean by that? Is that a question?
Bootstrapping. What's bootstrapping? I don't know what bootstrapping is.
I thought maybe it's called bootstrapping, the technique to put something around the tree to.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Not sure. Just guessing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Grindling. No. Yeah. Well, yeah. It sounds. Sounds good. Strapping a boot, you tie your laces, and then it becomes tight. So yeah, I can imagine that's. We can call it bootstrapping today. Yeah, girdling. That's the English word, girdling. Yeah, but thanks for for sharing your idea. Yeah, so that's some examples, and then just a basic overview of 4 of the techniques that they used very briefly. So one is aeroponics, so that's just the roots. So you can see that kind of explained on the right, that basically there's some seedlings growing. It's a bit more of a laboratory surrounding, and there's, you see some sprinklers, and all the blue dots are like water mist. And so these trees, the roots start like these conditions, and then you can guide the roots, as in this case in the shape of a chair. And once you think, your chair is nice enough, you can again cut it. So then instead of what in the past picture, the tree was grown with branches, here you could grow a tree with roots, like of course the people of the living bridges also do. So that's a technique which I have no experience with, but that's what you read about. The tree shaping is what I'm trying to do in my experiments. So that's basically that you try and frame them. So you have kind of like a metal or plastic or a wooden frame with which you guide the growth of the tree, because it grows most at the growing tip. So that's like, of course, also the most flexible part, and you still have a lot of freedom and possibility to guide that growth in whatever direction you as a human want. And of course, there might be trees that branches that come out which you don't want. So of course you can prune them, you can bend, you can shape. Here's the girding. That's what I talked about to regulate the growth, or ring barking, and so a way to stop the growth of a piece of wood without having to cut it off. So that's more the shaping. And the arbo sculpture, that's also what I want to try. To be honest, I haven't gotten into that. I know Ron has, but that's really where you connect the different branches. And I remember one of the things that Ron told us last year was that because there are different ways of connecting them. Some people use tie wraps or a rope, but I know Ron had very narrow screws, if I remember, to give a really strong connection, because during this phase of connection and growing together, you don't want there to be any movement with wind, because then the joining process has to start again. And after maybe depending on which tree you have, after half a year or a year, it's strong enough, you could theoretically take the screw out again. But so there are many different basically techniques which are quite common in tree nursery, like all this grafting or inoculation is also what happens when we try to combine the different characteristics of apple tree on different stems, or having 5 different colors of apples growing on one apple tree, or manipulations we can do like that. So that's something I'm really looking forward to doing, but I said, to be honest, I haven't done yet, because my experiments are only 1 year old. But I know a lot of people have done that successfully in the past. And I think the most important technique is patience and timing, because this is such a different way of building. We humans are just very impatient. And it's really something. Basically, you have to plant the house of your children today, so that in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, they have something to move into. So you also have to have like a long-term vision and a system, of course, which accommodates that, which is something which I think is quite challenging for our current day society. But something to I know, to experiment and to hope for. These are some of the many possibilities that I found online about what you could do with it besides building a house. So basically, yes, one of the older examples, which also have in Holland a lot, is that they were used, of course, as fences. I forgot the word, but the hedges that we cut down so that they lie down. And basically, you have a way to make very strong living fences for keeping animals, but also for defense, like the Landgraven in Zuid-Limburg, where basically they were made as military walls of living hedges. And the bridges, which I explained, you can see this very nice boat frame picture, which was basically a lot of trees growing in the shape of a boat frame and then cutting them off. And if you would turn it around, he could start building his boat. I have no idea how successful that was. I know Chris Kettle in the UK is a successful businessman who grows chairs and lampshades for you. So you can order it today, pay I think about £2,000. In 3 years, he will harvest your chair for you and send it to you. He has basically a plantation of chairs growing there, which are all being guided. You can find them online. Proven technology, you could say. These square bamboo posts, basically they're bamboos, but during the growth they were manipulated with the cage around it in different shapes. So I personally think round bamboo is fine with me, but if you really want a square bamboo for some reason, that's also something that you could manipulate. Of course, tools. A lot of walking sticks we have are a stick in a nice shape. And it's also not very hard to find a hay fork that is grown naturally, or ladders. But for example, also very nice experiments if you have a hammer and the handle breaks, you can just put the metal part of the hammer over a living branch and wait for maybe 2-3 years until the living branch is that thick that it's totally stuck again with the metal part of your hammer, and then you harvest it and you can start hammering again. Very, very cool idea. Clothing hangers, coat racks, hat holders, playground equipment, and the foundations for elevated houses and stages. Apparently, that's in the medieval times. They had living stages of hedges, and they would put planks on it, and that's where the traveling artists would put their show on. So how are we doing with time? Laura? Are you getting worried?
Depends on how much you have left. But it would be nice if we have some time left for discussion.
So we are getting pretty close, I think. So what can a living house be? Here I put some examples of what you can find online, but to be honest, none of these houses really exist. So I think that's also something you always have to be critical about when you see things like this, but also maybe you listen to me. It's like, hey, nice idea, but does it really work? These are all designs or skill models. But of course, the learning time for these things is very long, because I planted something last year, and 19 years I can maybe start telling you if it's a nice house to live in. This is again only a graphic design, graphic image of what they're trying in Italy. I think maybe it's about 5 years now, using a lot of cherry trees to not only make the frame of a house, but also, for example, you see on the left the lady climbing the natural stairs up to the second story. And they also had a lot of ideas about how to do that. So I think that's also an interesting example. And after this, I'll tell you a bit about the results of our first experiments. In this sheet, I put a few of the advantages which I think a living house have, and I think a lot are pretty straightforward, so I won't go into all of them. What is very interesting about this? If you're really looking about the regeneration aspects, I think the sixth point, for example, that's in normal housing, and I always feel a bit guilty as natural builder. I am compacting earth and I'm covering earth, where before maybe there was there were rainworms and there were animals living there, and suddenly I needed a house and I covered that area. And I think if you can manage to get your foundation with trees and roots, then you have a totally different impact. And in my conviction, also a very strong foundation, because trees can become quite heavy, so they can carry that weight, and at the same time you're providing food for the whole soil food web. You're allowing rainwater infiltration. So I think that's very regenerative, good example of regenerative aspects. And if you're talking more about social regeneration, I think the 8th point about connectedness with nature, because yeah, well, you know, how clear is a clear positive psychological effect of people being protected by trees they are living in. You know, you're not going to cut down a tree if that's your house. You're not going to throw away chemicals in your sewage system if that sewage system goes to a reed bed filter that is feeding your trees that you are living in. You're not going to contaminate them and kill your house. So it just gives you so much more connectedness and sense of responsibility for nature, which I think is something that's part of the social regeneration. So yeah, I think a lot of potential advantages, also a lot of disadvantages or challenges, you could say. I also definitely have some ethical questions still, you know, because we are, you are enforcing your will on trees. You know, you are mutilating them, you're maybe harvesting them, you're maybe cutting them. So it's, I think, something you should at least be very conscious about. I'm not saying you should never cut a tree. And to which extent are we able as a human society to start planning more in 60 years time? You know, if you know, we're all talking in Holland now that we have a housing crisis. Yeah, we should have started planting our houses 50 years ago. You know, something that would be great, but let's hope we can surprise ourselves that we can do that in the future. What are this is my 4 last sheets, I think. So what are my our experiments, the results of our experiments so far? So since we started building last year, well, firstly, we were able to start a second experiment, so that Monique is also here in the Zoom. She's a volunteer at the Hemkehof, which is in Amsterdam Zuid. It's an allotment association, and there we're building a living classroom this year, where there will be nature education for local kids, and we have the opportunity there to do a second experiment. So it's a bit similar to the first one, that we're building a more conventional natural house, the living roof and clay and straw, but again it will be surrounded by trees, so that the children in the future will be getting lessons about nature inside a tree. We haven't really decided yet which trees we're going to plant, but I find it a very nice thought that during their classes they can just pick an apple from their school building, and I think that will have a very nice impact. So yeah, we're doing a second experiment now. In Osdorp, I learned that some of the species that we planted are growing very fast and are very adapt very well to the circumstances. Mainly the forest willow and the sweet cherry are growing very fast. And for example, I thought that maple would grow very fast as well, and hornbeam. It's haagbeuk, but they're growing a lot slower, so not necessarily bad, but it doesn't really fit with our hurry and our haste. I think my biggest learning experience last year, and this is maybe a bit of a deception, you could say, is I should think more about the choice of a planting location, because sadly the living house that we planted in Osdorp was vandalized. So unfortunately the growing pace of the tree is not able to keep up with the pace of people breaking the branches. So unfortunately we've lost a lot of the growth going up, and I'm maybe also a bit I would have hoped that the community that we are living with or working with there would have taken better care of it, have more love for the building that we planted. I know there was a lot of enthusiasm, but I don't really sense that there's enough collective responsibility to take care of the living house during the growing phase. And that's also something that's apparently is very hard to change. So I'm still very enthusiastic about this whole concept of living building, but the past maybe few years I kind of become to dislike the city and the human dominance in the city, and how we sometimes interact with with nature, and also how we are, as society, trying to address these issues. For my feeling, it's not going fast enough or radical enough, kind of feel that the system has to be changed, but that I'm not really able to influence the system as a whole, and I'd be much more capable to changing my own lifestyle instead of the system. And then hoping that other people would also change their lifestyle, and slowly if we vibrate, that will have a big impact. So basically for me at this moment, it's going back to the land. So we are fleeing the city at the end of this year, and we bought a piece of land in the north of Spain, where we hope that we will have a very nourishing surrounding to plant a lot of living houses. Where it's basically on our own piece of land, where we can ensure that the trees are well taken care of and have good living conditions, where we can keep experimenting with this living building. And we can also invite, of course, people who are very enthusiastic about this theme to learn from us, to see how it works, to see what doesn't work. And for us, that feels as a nice way to contribute to a more regenerative world. Maybe not by working very hard on changing the system, but more living as close to our personal values as possible, and inviting other people to come and look, and hopefully have some nice neighbors. So maybe in that sense we can build a bit more critical mass. So if you would like to follow our journey in that, I put the Facebook link of Tierra Peleña in there. If you ever come to northern Spain, to Asturias, please drop us a line and see if you can come and spend the night in our in our living house in 15-20 years time. And I'm very curious to see how that will evolve. So that was a bit of our journey and where we're going to now. And I hope you, learned maybe a bit, or at least got inspired to learn more about this and practice it yourself. And maybe Ron is also in a position to share a bit about his latest insights. I know he was doing some very interesting experiment about growing planks, living planks. But we'll maybe see that in the short discussion we still have now, if there are any questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Really nice. I definitely had some new insights, although I really heard your presentation. I was like, wow, it's really beautiful. Also, what you said about it really struck me. What you said about getting to a place and then we just the first thing we bulldozer it instead of like getting there and get to know the site and living together with the site. And it's really a different way of looking at it. Let me see, because there was Monique, you had a comment, something about Paul Hocken. Do you want to say something about it, or is it just to share it?
Yeah, it was just to share.
Okay,
nothing to say about
perfect.
it.
Thanks. Okay, so everybody has that now, so we can look it up. Is there somebody with a question or a comment? Or Ron, do you maybe want to share something about the living planks, which also makes me very curious? We need those.
Because one of the big questions we still had during the talks was, how do you get a living roof that doesn't let water through? Of course, we have vegetation roofs, but they still require a chemical membrane. But if we can really make living planks. But I saw Ron unmuted, so please share with us. Nice to see you again.
Yes, the idea was to plant multiple trees directly against each other, so they would grow in one thick line. So then you have a wall, and you can do that on the top of the building too. So instead of doing it like this, planting the trees all next to each other. That was the idea. I haven't tried it yet.
Shit, we're lost here.
This winter, I'm going to plant 2 bench. So that's what I'm gonna try.
Cool.
Yeah.
Keep us posted.
Yeah. I will.
So somebody else with a question or a comment or curiosity. Alex?
It's not really a comment, but well, just not really a question, but I wish you guys good luck project in north of Spain. I've been in Spain since January, and I've been working around Spain, and also been in very remote places, people doing things from scratch. So I wish you guys good luck on the learning journey. Of course, you have already been there and lots of experience, but I might be interested to come and help you guys out in the future.
Cool.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Asturias yet, but to other places as well. So
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely drop us a message if you're close by.
yes.
We don't have a very good infrastructure yet for receiving people, like no drinking water and no electricity and no heating. So no flat space to put up your tent yet.
I've been there.
But working on that.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Wait, I was just wondering, one question that got up was, is there a possibility to make things like chairs or, yeah, that you cut off, leaving the trunks alive, like leaving the trees alive, or is it always like also ending?
Well, there are examples of living trees that you can find. Yeah, and then it still grows and it has leaves on it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
So like in your own garden, that would work fine. It wouldn't be like a business model to produce trees for to send off to people, of course, but that doesn't have to be the goal. No, there's if you just look like just Google on living chair, you'll probably find a photo of the guy with long hair sitting into a living rocking chair. Yeah.
Living rocking chair. That's even
Yeah. I think it looks like it goes forth and back and forth a bit. And then so definitely like just a little sitting corner with a living tree, a living table. Totally possible. Yeah. With enough love and care.
And I also see that Ron also shared something to get. Can be
cool. Thanks.
today with bouwenmetlevendebomen.nl. That sounds really good. Thanks. Ron.
Yeah.
And also for you, I see you already put it here in the Facebook now, where we can follow the Tierra de Leña.
I'll quickly type it.
Yeah, so for people that want to follow your journey and see what you plan there and experiments, perfect.
Yeah.
So people can copy it. That's nice. And then I think we also get to an end because it's 1:30 already. I don't know if there's somebody still with a question or a remark or something. We can stretch it a little bit.
If there is a nice book, Arbor Sculpture.
Sculpture, yeah.
So
nice.
If you want more information, it's a very nice book about building with living trees. So Arbor Sculpture.
Arbor Sculpture. I was just putting it in. Perfect.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is anything similar possible with bamboo? Because you talked about bamboo, can you graft bamboo into shapes that will?
Good question. Yeah, very good question. I didn't come across any examples, and I'm not enough of a botanist to know how that works with the cambium uniting.
Well, me
maybe. I have no idea. Maybe the fact that I didn't come like, of course, there are a lot of examples of natural building with bamboo, especially in Colombia. They're really. I don't know where are you based?
Oh, I'm here in the Netherlands. So.
Okay. No, I thought, yeah, because I know in Colombia they have a big reputation on making awesome buildings with bamboo, and yeah, in Holland that's maybe not. Well, we have some bamboos growing here as well, but I know to be honest, I don't know about how that grafting and combination of the cambium would work. So if you have some bamboo in the garden, try it. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Nice.
it's really fast, of course. So that will be yeah.
Yeah.
No, into the fast paradigm, but yeah, it would work to make.
Yeah. Like if you walk like through an old growth forest in the Netherlands, you can see a lot of examples of what plants are grafting. And basically, I think most of them are able to do it if they are of the same species. But yeah, there's not a lot of bamboo growing in old growth forests in Holland, so I've never come across that. But yeah. As I said, I'm not enough botanist to know about that.
Bamboo can grow together.
Can.
Yeah.
Can grow together.
Oh, okay.
So
Cool.
Oh well.
Yeah, well, that's a
So,
very fast growing, very flexible. So in that sense,
It
Yeah.
can go. I thought you said can't. Can.
can't.
oh, can't. Oh, sorry. Yeah, but of course in Holland, we have the wilgen, the willow, which is of course also very fast growing, very flexible, a lot of different types. So I think especially if we want to do this in Holland, that's a perfect substitute or alternative for bamboo, which maybe is a bit more logical in more tropical zones. But yeah. If Ron is right, that's not possible. So.
Yeah. No, it was really nice. I think there's a lot, really beautiful experiments of things that are still going to happen. I'm really curious, to the planks and also what you're going to grow, Peter, in Tierra de Leña.
Yeah.
It's going to be, a little paradise. I know for sure, knowing what you're going to be building there through the years. And so I would really encourage people to, follow your journey, like the rest of your journey that you're going to make. And this I think by that we're going to end this session. This is a monthly session, so this was the third session from the regenerative learning sessions, and it's every first Friday of the month. So the next one is going to be on the 4th of November. If you want to be updated, we have our newsletter here from the Regeneratie Coöperatie. So we are a collective of people working on regeneration. And here you can follow the activities. So if you enroll yourself for the newsletter, then you can also see the next regenerative learning session. So every time we have a different topic. Last time it was on the commons economy. Before that it was on dry farming. So every time it's something different to also show that somebody is maybe really into building, but the other one is more in growing foods. And I think we can together do something on regeneration with something that we really like. So that's what we want to show. And thanks a lot. I wish you a really beautiful Friday afternoon. And maybe you can throw open the camera and say something bye-bye, and then hopefully see you next time. So, and thank you, Peter, for this really inspiring story. Really
my pleasure.
Make and tell and
keep planting, everybody.
Exactly. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye. So I'm also going to stop recording.
Mag ik nog iets aanraden aan Laura?